So we have a great panel lined up for you, but before I bring our panelists on, I just want to give you a little bit of insight as to why we wanted to talk about intersectionality. So when I was thinking about this panel, and thinking about this whole conference, right, we are the minority of the minorities, right? We are women in business, not a ton of us. We are queer women, not a ton of us. And then we're also a whole bunch of other things. A lot of us are minorities in other ways. And I wanted to get us talking in a space where we could talk about those things and how they operate together in the workspace. Because we bring all those things to work. We've talked about bringing our whole selves. Well, this is bringing our whole self. So I want to get our panelists up here to talk about what it means to bring your whole self, what all of these identities together, or how all these identities come together in the workplace, and what are, the expectations, when you're combining those identities, what's that experience like for people? So if I could get my panelists up here. So welcome, Danielle, Silvia, Lanaya, Okay, so just to get us started, can you give us just a little bit about your background? Give us a little bit of your job history, kind of describing your path, and then why you thought it was important to be a part of this panel today.
I guess we're starting on the side. All right. Hi, my name is Danielle Piergallini. I work with American Airlines. I've been there for a little bit more than 2 years now. I'm part of our Diversity Advisory Council as well, which is the group that oversees kind of all of the employee business resource groups, we call them in American. So there's 20 of those groups, and there's 40 of us on the Diversity Council. Before American, I was an MBA student at Vanderbilt, and before business school, I did digital marketing at a small boutique agency beforehand. And the reason why I'm here today is that as a bi trans woman, I am the kind of forgotten part of the LGBT acronym. And as a result, have a little bit of a different experience in the workplace, I think, than typically some of my LGBT peers might.
Hi, I'm Silvia Lacayo. I am a brand manager at Unilever, which, if you don't know what Unilever is, it's a big company that has a lot of brands. There's a lot of stuff. Foods and personal care products. When I told my girlfriend I'd been invited to be on this panel, I confessed that I didn't know what intersectionality meant, and she explained it to me, and I thought, oh, it's left-handed. So, all joking aside, I've been at Unilever almost 6 years. Since the beginning, I've been part of the Pride business, employee resource group, we call it, but also employee business resource group, because it's, in many ways, it's about not just making sure that employees find themselves and find a way to be comfortable in being themselves and bring themselves to work, but also tying it back to the mission of the company, tying it back to business. So we make sure that we put the B in there, the employee business resource group, which I find to be exciting because I'm there to do a great job and put my skills to work, but also link that up to my passions, which include ensuring that we, as a company, are welcoming LGBT employees, but also communicating to consumers that the LGBT community is important to us. So it's a nice sort of side passion for me at work.
My name is Lanaya Irvin. I work for Bank of America Merrill Lynch. I'm in an international strategy role, spearheading international strategy for one of our global transaction services commercial client segments. Let's see. I've been with the bank since 2008. I joined post-MBA, University of Texas McCombs. I too have been actively engaged in our employee resource group, our LGBT ERG, in both a leadership capacity and then on this, more recently on the steering committee for New York Metro. And then as part of the inclusion-focused work that I at least help advance as an employee of the bank, I also sit on the Human Rights Campaign's National Business Advisory Council. So again, focus on workplace equality outside of Bank of America. And yeah, kind of a little background about me.
And I'm Bachul Koul. In the panel, you'll see Bachul in quotation marks, because technically that's not my name, but it's a story for another time. I'm a manager at A.T. Kearney, a management consulting firm. I started my career in financial services at Credit Suisse here in New York, and then worked at an event bank in Los Angeles, and then I went to Georgetown for business school, and joined management consulting as a way to really sort of take all of my experience and get a variety of new experience to help sort of build my skill set. But the one thing is sort of all the way along, the one common thread that you would see is that I've always been a passionate activist and advocate for the LGBT community. And furthermore, I'm Kashmiri, was born over in India and grew up in the States, but we spent 3 months every year back at home. My mother made sure that our house was a small pocket. It was almost like you walked through the door and you were back at home. That's how I was raised. So I have very strong ties to my community, to all of my communities, rather. And, you know, it was really important for me to be here today. I actually, as a consultant, we travel a lot. I actually haven't been home in almost a month. But instead of going straight home, I came here because I wanted to hear the general speak, and I wanted to meet all of you. And I want to keep this going. And what this for me is as a woman, as a member of the South Asian community, as a lesbian, I want to help provide a voice to all of those aspects of me, and then also to members of our community who, as you said, the forgotten members, we need to be allies to each other. And some of the work that I'm doing at my firm right now is helping our firm understand, okay, consulting world, you want to hire more women, but do you really know what it means to be a woman? Do you really know all of the women out there that you're missing because you think a woman looks like this and is like this and behaves like this? And so I'm just really happy and honored to be here today.
Thank you. So for our first question, I really want to get an idea of what you see the business landscape as being for minority folks. Has the landscape changed in your professional careers? Where do you see it heading? Are we kind of stalled?
I think we've seen some change, but I also think that a lot of stuff hasn't changed. And so I think that companies are getting a lot better about being more inclusive and about doing a lot of the outreach to bring diversity candidates into the hiring process and ultimately into the company, into leadership roles. But at the same time, I think that a lot of those same companies aren't maybe looking at some of the systemic problems that really make it difficult to find good talent within diversity, because they have to deal with all of these other kind of obstacles and barriers that are part of their intersectionality.
Yeah, I was joking with someone earlier today, and I actually had to use the phrase, well, there wasn't Google then, and it kind of reminded me how old I am, but I started entering the workforce through internships and whatnot in the late 90s. And as I like to say, sort of pre-Ellen, post-Ellen. But I've seen a lot of really great positive change, but I'm not satisfied. And I don't ever want it to feel like they're throwing us a bone. You know, I don't want them to say, I don't want to look at a leadership and say, you only have 4 women out of hundreds of men. They're like, but that's 3 more than we had 5 years ago. And I'm like, well, that's great, but that's still 4 out of 500. And so I think that we just need to keep the momentum going, and we as a community can't be placated or satisfied. We can't sort of sit back on our laurels and think, okay, we're good, you know? I think we have to keep that fire going. That's like this is good for it.
I mean, I would agree, and I think large companies recognize the importance of diversity as a business imperative. I mean, it is true. There is momentum. The landscape has changed. But again, there's still a great deal of work to do, right? So we obviously are operating in increasingly global business landscapes. Clients expect us to be more diverse. We should reflect the communities in which we operate. I would say most of our firms should. But at the same time, I think there's a disconnect in what the firms kind of say they're hoping to achieve and what actually has been achieved, right? So there has been some inroads, at least within the financials. I know tech has obviously made a pronounced, made it clear that they're going to make an effort to increase the visibility of women in leadership. I find the financials are doing the same, but again, even the individuals who are in those ranks, there's something missing, right? What about those who are kind of multiple identity diverse candidates? Where are the LGBT senior leaders oftentimes? And there are individuals from Bloomberg in this room. We're looking to pull together a women's kind of roundtable event. But it's interesting that, when it came to, okay, well, what senior leaders do we have there? Initially, we're like, okay, lesbian senior leaders, how can we, okay. Women senior leader allies, who are allies, maybe we can get those. And then we realized, wait, we might end up having to make sure that we also, open it up to LGBT leaders who happen to be white male-bodied individuals, just because there's that lack of access to them. So we recognize that there's definitely been momentum. Firms are attempting to engage women, promoting re-entry programs for working mothers, doing what they will, of course, to achieve that 100 score in the HRC CEI, and focusing on inclusion, but there's still a lot of work to be done. A lot of work to ensure that we're kind of bridging, across some of these barriers, to ensure that we have a talent pool that's diverse, not just, checking a box, meaning I have that one female military veteran, lesbian on my team. There we go. Good. 9 out of 10 are white males, and I'm okay because I checked 3 boxes that one time. So, I think there's an opportunity for us to do more, but I don't want to discount the inroads that large firms have made thus far.
So now I want to make it a little bit more personal. Have you, in your careers, found that one of your identities was more difficult to navigate in the workspace? And if so, which ones? Or is there a combination that's happening there that you're finding is more difficult for people or for you to be out about, whatever that means to you?
Sorry. I think being a woman is still, in so many ways, the most difficult one, because in so many ways it's the most nebulous one. Even though there's a sort of a relatively clear understanding, you compare yourself to a male colleague who is a male and a female in the room, but there are so many things happening sort of in the back of our minds that we are not even really aware are happening, that lead us to make choices about who do we select for promotion, who do we select to partner with. I think that one is sort of the trickiest one. I kind of realize that sort of the more time I spend in the corporate world, the more that seems to be clear to me. Even being Hispanic in some ways, it is challenging, but my own personal experience has been, there are a lot of, in marketing, some companies are really good about marketing to the Hispanic consumer, or Hispanic market, because they realize it's the fastest growing ethnic minority, and so there's a lot of potential there for growth and driving your numbers. But they still don't know how to do it, and yet they will dedicate a team. And in my case, I was really afraid to go do a specifically Hispanic marketing role because I didn't want to be pigeonholed. Until somebody said, Silvia, if you don't apply for that role, you'll realize that you're missing out on one thing. Everybody that you're competing with qualified just like you are, except you have one additional skill set that they don't have. Like you actually understand Hispanics because you are Hispanic and you speak Spanish and they don't. And beyond that, you have the same skill sets as everybody else. And so when she reframed it for me, I realized, okay, well, actually, it's great because not that many people can do this role. I can, not just because I'm a good manager, but because I have an extra skill set. I'm bilingual, not everybody is. That helps. But being a woman is different. It's a very different space, and it's a lot harder to navigate, especially because the people that you need on your side can't relate to that often. So like my boss is a white, straight man, and it has been that way for some time now. Him and the one before, and so it's really kind of a challenge, but also an interesting opportunity to figure out how to get those folks to really be our allies, because that's really the only way, I think, to move ourselves forward in a very significant way. And I think that Sheryl Sandberg has recently said that that's basically what we have to do, is get the men to see what is in it for them to be able to make that, leap forward.
So to get back to the point we were talking about earlier about what group do you fit in and sort of sometimes falling in between the cracks. So I'm from Kashmir, which not a lot of people that I meet even know really where that is. I generally look like some amorphous ethnicity, but they're not really sure where I'm from. My name, people tell me, sounds Japanese, so people are seriously confused about what ethnic group I'm a part of. They're not confused by the fact that I'm a lesbian, and that's great. I love that. Clearly I'm a woman, also sort of easier to explain, although that gets tricky sometimes as well because of the way I dress and my hair. For me, it's interesting. I think it's in the sort of the jobs that I've had, I would agree even it's being a woman, because no matter what you look like or no matter my ability to blend or to sort of grow up when I have to, right? At the end of the day, I'm still a woman, and I still have to, I'll try and infiltrate these groups and, play up whatever side I need to play up to get in. And with men, especially in the sort of banking world, I sort of played up that side, but then every time they would say something either misogynistic or homophobic, I would have to reveal myself and say, guys, that's not okay, And then they sort of back down and you lose a little bit of credibility, you work your way in, and the same thing happens again. And then you go to the South Asian community and, I don't really fit in the South Asian groups either because it's still kind of a really taboo subject in the South Asian communities. They don't really understand. They don't care to hear about my fiance or my wedding because it's not comfortable for them. And then it's one of those things where, and then you go to a women's networking event, and I'm like, oh, women's consulting network, or women's banking networking. You go, and it's really such a binary discussion on gender. I'm like, I don't fit in here either, but I'll try. So the way I play up to that community is I'll talk about things I've done for my fiance, and then they can say, oh, you're such a good partner. And then they view me in that sort of like that last picture with the GIF. I think what's tricky for being a member of so many different communities is the way I've sort of tried to turn it into a professional tool is to say, you know what, instead of letting them use this against me, I'm going to use it for me. And I'm going to play up what I need to play up, what I need to play up. But at the same time, I know who I am. And at any point in time, something is said or done that goes against the very core of my being, that's an opportunity to stand up and educate, and that's kind of what I've tried to do.
It sounds so exhausting, having to play up anything or kind of navigate the world in that way. And I tend to be pretty unapologetically black and green. So I hope that the way I've been professionally received is you know, as close to authentic as I can allow it to be. But I actually, for me, it wouldn't be my womanness. It probably would have to be my color. So undoubtedly, the first thing that anyone will absorb when they see me is that I'm a brown person. Doesn't matter if I'm wearing a suit or if you see me from afar in a hoodie after a long jog. Second, depending on my gender performance at the moment, I'm in work drag. I don't look like this on the weekends. Yeah, so, you know, second, depending on my gender performance at the moment, they'll recognize that I am female-bodied. And then lastly, if they're given access to learn about me, they'll learn that I'm queer. So it's been interesting over the years. You have these seemingly innocuous moments that kind of chip away, or they aim to. For example, there was a time, obviously not long ago, I was in your shoes, you know, an MBA, you know, you're pursuing either that summer role or full time. You have your on-campus interviews or first, second rounds, so they fly you out for final rounds or super days, whatever it may be. And I can recall the first time that occurred. It wasn't the last, the first. I'm at a final round interview with a firm. Obviously, we've been flown out, and there may be a dozen of us there at final round. So it was my third interview of the day. And the interviewer, towards the end of the interview, tells me that I'm very articulate.
Oh, I hate.
And so, in that moment, of course, he or she probably received a thank you with a question mark behind it. You know, thank you. What I was thinking in that moment, one, I think earlier today you all mentioned that you had about 1,800 applicants for 5 roles. You've had a couple rounds of interviews. We're here to find, you know, would you expect me not to be able to communicate my thoughts? Wasn't the last time that occurred in an interview setting in an MBA. But of course, you know, chatting with my peers, it's not something that came up in their interviews, of course, right? So the expectations were slightly different. Flash forward a couple years, I'm at the bank and been enrolled a couple of years through our MBA program, and in a car with another banker headed to a client. This individual turns to me and asks, "Are you going to be able to speak intelligently to the client?" And at that point, again, it's been 2 years. One, anyone spends maybe 2 minutes with me, they know that I can communicate my thoughts. And then 2, you know, my productivity was always high. My output was always stellar. I was definitely not the laggard on the team. Definitely a high performer. So this person was clearly just exercising their power over me in that moment. And so of course I just turned and I said, "No, I think I'll be fine, thank you." But I can recall, you know, kind of heading downtown in that car thinking, would that question have been asked if I were a white male MBA sitting next to this person? And if they were to ask that question, would they have used those words? That word choice was stinging, right? So you have these moments, and you know, it's unfortunately they're not rare, but you have these moments where, you know, we talk about the intersection, and you bring your whole self to work. You can't really it's hard to wrap your mind around how difficult it is to be resilient in being your authentic self. Because you know you have to deal with, of course, homophobic comments and misogyny in the workplace, but that's outside of kind of delivering on the task at hand and the client what they need. And so I think for me, you know, it's one of those things where I think my color, you know, definitely is something that has been more difficult to navigate in the workplace. And I mean, on the flip side of that, it's also the way that I've been received by Black and brown executives and senior or individuals within the firm. It's great for you to be rising talent and do well, but you extend an invite to a really important ally event or something within the firm, and the senior leaders with whom you have really great rapport, the ones who don't reply are the Black executives, the ones who don't show up ever, not just because of travel, year after year. And is it something that makes me sad or upsets me? Not at all. But early on, it just was a very clear signal that is not where I would seek out my sponsorship. That is not where I would seek out kind of some of my modeling. So I think, again, you think about these things that you're kind of navigating day in, day out. For me, I think the color has been the most interesting challenge. My engagement with the LGBT community, and that being my being out, being having a positive impact on my career, hands down, something that's great. But I think over my womanness, I'm also very A-type at work, so the guys just get it, I'm serious about my NCAA tournament bracket. Like, we have a lot to talk about, so my partner's stunning, so we have a lot of things we can share. But yeah, it's my blackness. I think that is more of a challenge.
I think for me and for a lot of trans people, you sort of have two different experiences. One is during the actual process of transition itself, where kind of being trans comes to the forefront, and it's something that you are dealing with on a daily basis, whether that's access to medical care, legal systems to change your name and gender identity, or interviewing for jobs. And in business school, I interviewed kind of during transition, because I transitioned during business school. And there would be interviews where I'm sitting in the room with somebody, and he says, well, let's walk. And you can see the pause when he's trying to figure out what pronoun should I use, them to their car. And it's a very sort of subtle kind of thing. Or when you're on a phone interview, or showing up somewhere and they said, oh, I expected, to be speaking with a woman. And things like, and then it's like, well, do I correct you? And that's how I start off my interview, with kind of this resistance, or do I maybe just let that slide and we can deal with that later on in the interview process if necessary. But now that I'm further past transition, last year I dated a guy for the majority of the year. So if I came into work on Monday and somebody asked what I did over the weekend, I say, oh, my boyfriend and I went and saw Guardians of the Galaxy. That to them sounds pretty kind of heteronormative, and cis-heteronormative. And I don't have to share those aspects of my identity if I don't want to, because they're not immediately obvious. And so that makes it much more, I think, of a conscious choice as to whether or not I want to have those kinds of discussions and experience those kinds of things. And so for me, at this point in my career, it's much more about, like what Silvia was saying, it's about being a woman at work and being told by your manager that, hey, there's this way you kind of come across in a lot of meetings, and maybe you can work on changing how you communicate so that you don't sound so much like a bitch. She didn't say that. That's the idea that you don't come across that way. Because as a trans person, you get very comfortable with having to contend for everything because nobody else is going to give it to you. And so then that's sort of that behavior works. And that's the kind of the behavior that I continue to use in the workplace. And it can get you so far, but it will kind of limit your options at some point.
At business school, and which identity is most salient, and it's kind of, it depends on the situation. I think I've gotten many more comments about my blackness, like a lot of comments for some reason. A lot of like, oh yeah, you're black, you'll totally get all the interviews, I'm totally fine. Like, and they call me a threefer. But yeah. But in terms of like passive aggressive actions, I think that would very much be about being a woman. Like that's just like a constant like cutting you off, talking over you, not asking you to do homework with them, not inviting you when they're going for drinks, like that sort of thing. So I don't know which one of those is more impactful. It's such a difficult thing. Is it the words that are difficult, or is it the action that's difficult? I'm not sure. But thank you for sharing all of that. I would like to make this a little bit of a dialogue, because we have a whole lot of knowledge in this audience, and we have a whole lot of interesting ideas. And I heard all that feedback, everybody and stuff. So give us your questions, comments. Oh, we have one down here.
Thank you first for sharing your experience, and I wanted to hear from you about what aspects of your molecule of identity have you been able to leverage to your advantage or use advantageously in your career, rather than the ones with which you've experienced discrimination.
Well, I'll start just quickly. Right now I'm working for Kearney, and I'll tell you that it's probably the most supported I've ever felt on all dimensions of who I am. They were so excited to hear that I was coming here today, and they were so excited that I was speaking on the panel, and they've been like, the company's Twitter has been retweeting my tweets and getting it out there, and it's, you know, they understand the value of diversity, and they understand that they've come a little bit away, and there's a long way to go, and they're excited about it. I'd say the molecule of my identity, so the authenticity and the perseverance that I had to maintain after coming out to my parents in high school and it not being well received, as an understatement, but sticking to my guns. And that sort of perseverance and dedication to authenticity, I think has been what's been helpful for me to be as successful in my career. You know, I went through the financial crisis. I had to reinvent myself. I went to business school older than most of my peers. Tried to break into a career in an industry that's very difficult to get into. But I just sort of think back, and it's like, God, if I could survive coming out to two Kashmiri parents, I can pretty much do it.
I think for me, being authentic and kind of coming out has been very helpful. And so one thing that a way I like to describe it to sort of cis heteronormative people is that if you imagine a computer and it's running all these different programs, some of those programs for a trans person or a queer person are, what are people going to think when they find out? What is this going to mean for my career? All of these kind of what-if scenarios that are running. And as you start to bring your full self to work and you no longer worry about it because you've come out, then you get to shut those programs down. And now all of a sudden you have a lot more memory available or resources available to start doing other things. And it's something that I've seen from both of my managers at American as well as kind of from my peers in business school, that kind of the more I owned who I was, the better I performed.
I'd say definitely being gay has been great for me, but not necessarily by accident. I think I hadn't really thought about how I've actually chosen my path in some ways deliberately. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I think just growing up in an environment where it's a lot more progressive than a lot of other parts of the country, I just developed this expectation that everybody was just going to be okay with it, and if they were not, they were in the wrong place. And I worked for these small, progressive, organic food companies all before business school, and I just always expected everybody was going to accept it and sort of get past it if they had to think about it. And so then I went to Berkeley for my undergrad, and then I went to Berkeley for my MBA. So I've always had sort of that bit of protection. So I think it helped because I just had this confidence about it, and I also didn't think about it as much because nobody else was thinking about it, or most people weren't thinking about it. So it allowed me to focus on all these other areas where maybe I didn't feel as confident. And so fast forward to where I am now, and I still expect people to be okay with it, and I feel like me projecting that sort of nips in the bud anything that anybody might potentially be thinking about encountering that. Because they see, I think they see that I'm so far ahead of that I'm not focusing on it. And yet, I will use it as an opportunity to, talk to a VP who wants to learn more, and share a rainbow flag with a VP who wants to be supportive and she doesn't know how to do it, and get to work with sort of high-level folks. So we invited Michael Sam to come and talk at Unilever. A group of us had to organize that, and so there's only like 10 of us, and so we get to meet these folks and talk with them and really kind of be on the same panel as the diversity and inclusion committee, and that's all of the presidents and the VPs and all these executives. So in some ways, I've used it to my advantage once I've gotten past the fact that it might be an issue for some people. So for me, that's been milk it when you can, I guess. Is how I think about it. And because you're doing good for someone else when they want to be educated as well.
Yeah, and I think definitely the LGBT, my being gay, has been positive kind of in my work life. I think naturalizing my being, similar to what she was saying, it's something just so second nature. At least my kind of being out, being visible to at least my direct team. When you're in a client-facing role, you're in and out of the closet every day. I guess it's for another panel. But yeah, so it's one of those things where I think early on, post B school, when I joined the firm, they have the employee networks, resource groups. The Black professional groups seem to have some pretty decent leadership, a larger kind of visible presence. The LGBT group was nowhere to be found, and someone who very, very kind of queer every minute. And that was a problem for me. I was like, where are the gays? I'm in New York. I have to find the gays. I attempted to email the individual who was spearheading the network at the time. No response. So I ended up taking on more of a kind of active leadership role within the ERG much sooner than I expected. But through that, of course, we ended up doing focus groups with senior leaders, kind of helping them with kind of language and being able to kind of speak to their teams and how can they motivate managing directors beneath them to be more inclusive, because honestly, language in some cases is the barrier. I know for a fact that first year, when I told my boss that I had a partner, I always say this, I'm sure you thought I had a business on the side, right? So, what? Years ago. But, so that led to, and this is the reason why it's really, really important to be talking about kind of the intersections and, really kind of being comfortable latching on to your communities of belief, right? So no matter if you're gay, or if it's the women's community, or the military community, if you're a working parent, find something that you're passionate about and get engaged, right? Be engaged. I think that's what benefited me. Obviously, the LGBT community is something I was passionate about. I was engaged early on, and that just led, year after year to one thing. So I was, the co-chair of our New York Pride Network. Did that for a couple of years, or a year and a half or so, 2 years, and I was invited to join Interbank, or take a kind of rep role on our Interbank Roundtable, now Open Finance, which is a consortium of LGBT leaders and ERGs across the financials. And you meet to kind of work together to advance the needle in the industry. Really, really great, powerful group, opportunity to expand the network. And then from that, there were other opportunities. And I'm now on the board of New York City LGBT Anti-Violence Network. I mentioned I'm on HRC's National Business Advisory Council. But all of these things are things that kind of materialize organically, right? And we all think about networking. Networking is draining, and so I don't do it. what I do is I engage in the things that I'm passionate about. I work really hard in my role, and more often than not, the networking becomes something that is a lot more authentic. I'm connecting with people and advancing things that matter to me, and I think it kind of just shines through. So you end up having a network of people who are new to their careers and be just as close to senior executives who've been doing it for 20, 30 years because you access them in a different way. Accessing them on a project, or you're bringing a speaker. We brought Congressman Barney Frank to One Bryant Park right after Dodd-Frank. That was interesting. Everybody wanted to come to that. But it's one of those opportunities to really, you end up having to connect with, C-suite or individuals just to advance these things that matter to you, but then they get to see someone who's young talent in a way that's a bit more intimate and kind of better than the networking and the cocktail hour. So I would say engage in the things that you're passionate about, and it'll benefit you in your career.
Oh, Mike's
I could relate to a lot of the comments that were made about dealing with a cultural background that's quite conservative. My mother is from the Middle East, and my family in Syria does not know that I'm gay. What are some challenges that some of you have had in terms of reconciling your sexual identity, either with your cultural background or other aspects of your identity?
I am fortunate enough to be half Swedish, and so I actually haven't experienced too much problems with this from a cultural background perspective. So I'll refer to the other panelists.
So I have being from Kashmir, and the majority of my family is in India. So it's my immediate family and a couple of cousins in the U.S. My entire family doesn't know that I'm gay either, but not because of really any other reason other than people who I wanted to know, my cousins who I'm close with, they know. And for a long time it was sort of my mom had requested that we just sort of keep it tight, even in the family. But even now, I was at a wedding and a cousin came up to my mom and said, all right, the jig is up on Bachul. We know what's going on. Now let's move past that. I know this nice Indian woman. I'm engaged, and my mom actually, for the first time this past year, said, and she didn't say it the right way, but she said, Bachul has a lovely friend with whom she shares an apartment, and she's a doctor. So. I'll say this. One thing I do want to focus on is being more visible in my community. That's important to me. And, I feel very tied to my Kashmiriness and my Indianness and my Hindu religion and all of that stuff. And so I, will be incorporating parts of it into my wedding ceremony, and what I'll say is this, it's sometimes not safe back at home, and I get that, and I would be very careful when I go back home, but all that matters is what your family feels and thinks and cares about. And it's taken 18 plus years, but the same parents who threw me out of the house when they found out I was gay are right now in India having my wedding outfit made. So, you just kind of have to persevere and educate and make them see that, and it's crazy to say this, but, ethnic parents think that they did something wrong because they think it's something wrong. And the more they can see that it's nothing wrong, it's just who you are, so again, it's that exhausting that you talked about. It's a lot of education, it's a lot of perseverance, but don't ever lose your ethnic identity because you feel like it's in conflict with your LGBT identity. The best thing to do is to bring them together and try to be that person to both communities, because there might be some people in the gay community who don't know about your ethnic community. So it's a big learning experience.
Yeah, I grew up really religious, a Black religious family, and so we were politically very liberal, but socially very, very conservative. And my family was like the liberal of liberals because I got to wear like short dresses. And that was like a big deal. To church. And yeah, it was very hard making those worlds meet, and it's been very hard. It continues to be very hard. I've been out with my mom for like 10 years, and it's still a struggle. She loves me though, and so it's been navigating. Okay, how do we have this relationship, even though we're never going to really be on the same page? And I think at some point around year like 6, we were just like we're not going to get to the same page, and that's okay maybe, as long as we learn how to respect each other. And that's also a struggle for me because I find that some of my friends are not supportive of that, and they're like, oh, you know, like your mom's like anti-gay, so like you should like not talk to your mom. And I'm like, no, I love my mom, and she doesn't say anything bad to me. Like she doesn't want to hurt me. She's just coming from this place where this isn't okay for her, and she doesn't really understand how to relate, and that's okay because she's trying. She's trying to be there. She's trying to be understanding, and she's supportive of me in my relationship. She'll talk to me about my relationships and just not too much in depth. Just like, yeah, what'd you have for dinner? I'm sure it was nice she got you flowers, you know. But we've learned how to navigate those waters, but I think it's going to be a lifetime of figuring that out and, you know, sometimes stepping 2 steps forward and, you know, a half step back and taking a break and coming back to it.
Each other.
I think it kind of depends on your mood that day. Like, do you feel like this is a moment to educate, or do you feel like this is something that you don't want to deal with that day? But like, I have coworkers who have made comments about sort of other aspects of identity, whether that's they've said something that's ableist or body shaming or anything like that. And there are certain kind of experiences that I've had where I'm like, no, this is wrong, and I'm going to say that I don't want this kind of conversation to be happening in the cubicle next to mine. And so I think that part of it is the context of where those are being said and by whom. But then I also think part of it is just like, you know, like being on all the time as an activist is a complete drain, and so you have to sort of pick and choose those teachable moments.
I have no filter, I'm told, by my mentors. And I made a decision in my early 30s, which I guess I'm still in, kind of, that I'm just tired. I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm not going to take it on behalf of me as a South Asian queer woman. I'm not going to take it on behalf of my Black peers. I'm not going to take it on behalf of my trans peers. I'm just not going to take it anymore. And so I'm constantly saying, you know, and I don't do it in an aggressive way. What I'll typically do is, I mean, if what they're saying is aggressive, then I'll step in. But I'll just pull people aside and say, do you understand the impact that your words had on me because of this? You know? Or for example, one time, again, depending on your mood, we were in Milwaukee for a project, and I guess it's kind of dangerous at night. So they were going to send out an email that no women should walk by themselves after dark back to the hotel. And so I heard them drafting this email in the team room, and I got up and I grabbed the smallest guy on the team, and I pulled him over and I said, you're going to change that. Nobody should walk, because if you're going home late at night, who do you want with you, me or him? Friends, he was okay with it. I think you got to do what feels right to you. For me, it's standing up, because I just had it.
Fortunately, I've never actually experienced anything really outlandish like that. Again, maybe sort of probably defined the places I've been, you know, at, and I'm sure it'd be different if I was in the middle of, you know, Oklahoma or something, I don't know. But I do think, sort of related to that, there's a lot you can proactively do to make sure people don't even sort of step in that space. I think one of the, like, my strongest sort of value in the business environment is I know that I am a woman, I am Hispanic, I am a lesbian, I am a lot of things that can put me at a disadvantage compared to my colleagues. So what do I have to do to make sure that there's never a question that I can do my job, and that I earn the respect of everybody that works with me in some ways. And by the way, this one value actually resonates really well with those people that I need as an ally. So my boss, you know, the white guy, is something that he respects. And that is just saying, I'm going to be better than everybody else at my job. There's no reason for me to slack. I can't use these identities as sort of a crutch. I'm going to demonstrate that I can do this job not just as good as others, but better than everybody else. And then it kind of just eliminates anything that there might be, or it doesn't really eliminate everything, but it really, it means that I've taken sort of charge of painting my own sort of brand for who I am. I've done the most that I can do. And then if any microaggressive sort of comment comes after, then, you know, that's just very crazy. That's really bad. There's not that much more that I can do to change that situation other than, you know, be the best business partner that I can be that, you know, sort of the smartest about my business, and then, you know, the most about what I'm doing in my job to really kind of take it to the business level and forget all the rest of it.
Okay, do we have time for one more?
I wanted to thank all of you for being here. This has been really incredible. And I wanted to sort of tie back together. A lot of people have been talking about what you can do as an individual to sort of manage some of the things that come at you as an intersectional individual. But I'm assuming that from what you said about the kinds of either microaggressions or just straight up aggressions that you get, that generally those are coming from cis white people. I'm just making an assumption, and I am a lesbian, but I am also cis and white. And my partner is mixed race, and I have this conversation with her a lot, and so I'd like to ask you so that I don't have to keep nagging her with it. But I'd really love to know, as a cis white individual, despite you know, being gay and being sort of joining with you in those battles, I'd like to know what you feel are some good characteristics of white allies who can really, without essentializing you or exoticizing you or without, you know, infantilizing you, how we can help in whatever way that you think is most responsible and most ethical and most helpful.
I think part of that is checking other people's privilege for them and making it not the responsibility of the person who is intersectional to own all of the education. And I think something else is to not necessarily assume intent with those microaggressions, because I think a lot of people paint privilege as this tool that people use against you when it's often just a product of circumstance that they may not even be aware of. And I think that you can do that either in a group setting, or you can pull somebody aside and say, hey, have you ever thought about this? And use those types of examples to help them understand how, if you reframe what they said, it would be viewed problematic in a different context, which means that it's probably also problematic in the context of whatever had happened. And I think that the more we have other people kind of helping educate, or at least stop this type of behavior, the easier it's going to be for other voices to speak up and share their experiences and continue that.
Yeah, I completely agree. The more we can have more voices saying what we're saying, speaking up. You know, I've had a client say something about the way that I dress. It was just a really awkward situation. And I, for a rare moment, was at a loss for words. And one of my colleagues spoke up and was like, you know, I'm not really sure what the intent of what you were saying was, but you know, you gotta wear, you know, gotta wear what's comfortable on the inside and the outside. And she just kind of took the battle up for me, and it was really helpful to not have to fight, to sort of be able to relax. Let's do it. And Ally and our firm got our firm on as one of the many great companies that signed the amicus brief demanding marriage equality. That wasn't even a member of our community, that was an ally. So just taking up the banner and doing what you can.
I think understanding that coming from you, it sounds different. And that people are willing to listen and think about it in a way that it doesn't necessarily affect them coming from somebody like so I think we have to, Kat? Okay.
Can I just say something, please? Sorry.
Super quick.
At the Lesbian Speak Tech Summit, there was a hackathon where me and 10 other queer women sat in a room and developed an app called Paper Cuts to log microaggressions that you experience at work. It isn't in the App Store yet and will not be for a little while. But if anyone is interested in that, and also if anyone works for HR, I would love to chat with you. It's a side project that could really kind of live and exist. So I'm Emma, and I'd like to talk about Paper Cuts.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, panelists.